While in Poland, President Trump also warned North Korea. Take a look.
As far as North Korea is concerned, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't like to talk about what I have planned, but I have some pretty severe things that we're thinking about. That doesn't mean we're going to do them. I don't draw red lines. President Obama drew a red line, and I was the one that made it look a little bit better than it was, but that could have been done a lot sooner, and you wouldn't have had the same situation that you have right now in Syria. That was a big mistake. But I think we'll just take a look at what happens over the coming weeks and months with respect to North Korea. It's a shame that they're behaving this way, but they are behaving in a very, very dangerous manner, and something will have to be done about it.
Let's bring in Vivian Salama. She's a White House reporter for the Associated Press, joining us from Washington. Vivian, let's just begin there with North Korea. A pretty vague statement by the president. He says he's considering some very severe option. He doesn't intend to draw any red lines. Does that represent an emergence of policy, a shift in policy, or basically the status quo?
Well, like he said, I think that this reference of a red line has negative connotation because a lot of people condemned the Obama administration for using that term and then failing to take any definitive action against Syria at the time. And so with regard to North Korea, I think that the Trump administration is really trying to take calculated use of that term in terms of it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that they're going to take military action. They feel that the red line term sort of indicates or hints at military action, and so they don't want to suggest that. What they're suggesting and what every policy advisors that we've spoken to have told us is that they are really pushing for other kinds of severe penalties against North Korea, but not only to North Korea itself, but to anyone who assists North Korea financially. And we saw that just recently with regard to sanctions that were implemented on a Chinese bank, a Chinese company, and 2 individuals, that the Trump administration now says that anyone who is assisting North Korea is also going to be susceptible to penalties and action from the U.S. and will essentially be blacklisted from the U.S. financial system. And so that's what he's talking about, really, by these severe action. Of course, essentially everybody wants access to the U.S. dollar and U.S. markets, and so they feel that by dangling sort of the potential for sanctions to countries outside of North Korea who might be assisting, that they can really sway them to join the U.S. in pressuring North Korea to stop its nuclear ambitions.
Vivian, in that speech and in a press conference earlier, the president condemned what he called Russia's destabilizing behavior in the region. But in that press conference, he was also asked to weigh in on Russian election meddling. Let us listen to what he had to say.
Will you once and for all, yes or no, definitively say that Russia interfered in the 2016 election?
Well, I think it was Russia, and I think it could have been other people in other countries. Could have been a lot of people interfered. I said it very simply. I think it could very well have been Russia, but I think it could well have been other countries, and I won't be specific. But I think a lot of people interfere. I think it's been happening for a long time. It's been happening for many, many years. Now, the thing I have to mention is that Barack Obama, when he was president, found out about this in terms of if it were Russia, found out about it in August. Now, the election was in November. That's a lot of time. He did nothing about it. I agree. I think it was Russia, but I think it was probably other people and/or countries, and I see nothing wrong with that statement. Nobody really knows. Nobody really knows for sure. I remember when I was sitting back listening about Iraq, weapons of mass destruction, how everybody was 100% sure that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Guess what? That led to one big mess. They were wrong, and it led to a mess. So it was Russia, and I think it was probably others also, and that's been going on for a long period of time. But my big question is, why did Obama do nothing about it from August all the way to November 8th? He did nothing about it, and it wasn't because he choked.
So a lot to unpack there, Vivian. No one really knows, except for a number of our intelligence agencies, They've been pretty clear about what they know, and they believe that Russia interfered with the 2016 election. You know, there's a lot of talk about whether or not in his bilateral meeting with Vladimir Putin, will he bring this up? What do you make of this answer, and what do you think it reveals about what he may or may not bring up in that meeting?
It's not the first time that President Trump acknowledges that Russia probably interfered in the election. It's also not the first time that he suggests other countries may have tampered with the election, may have meddled. In fact, in the past, he's actually specified that maybe China could have been involved or other countries. And so it's something that he has asserted. And so whether or not he confronts Vladimir Putin on Friday about this election meddling and the accusations by some intelligence agencies remains to be seen. However, just the fact that he's standing in Poland and making these assertions, and he said a couple of things in Poland on Thursday that were really significant in terms of saying that he acknowledges that Russia was probably involved in election meddling, but also saying that he called on Russia to tone down its aggression in Ukraine, which is pretty significant for him. He said it in writing before the White House has issued statements of that nature, but it's really the first time that we heard him come out and bluntly say something like that. And so, those are really significant statements, not because they're the first time he says it, because he's saying it in Poland, in Central Europe, in an area that is very concerned about the rising threat of Russian influence and aggression. And so that's definitely setting the tone going into this meeting on Friday with Vladimir Putin, and definitely going to make some interesting conversations, since Russia continues to assert that it neither meddled in the elections nor does it see that its role in Ukraine is aggressive in any way.
Yeah. Well, clearly he knows his audience, Vivian, but as we look forward to the high-stakes G20 summit in Germany, where he is less popular, what other than the Putin meeting are you going to be watching closely?
There are a number of things. Of course, his meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping is going to be very significant because of the fact that he's come out very strong against China in recent days, accusing it of essentially disappointing him in playing a role to tone down North Korean aggression. And so after the missile test this week in North Korea, there's going to be some very hard discussions, and especially after the U.S. sanctioned a couple of Chinese entities last week. That was something that did not go over very well in Beijing, and so there's going to be some tough discussions there. Certainly, he's going to continue his conversations with Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, who he has made repeated requests that Germany steps up its defense spending as part of its commitment to NATO. Something that he repeated today in Poland is that Poland is an example of that, because it does spend over 2% of its GDP on defense spending, but Germany falls short of that, as well as most of the NATO countries. And so that's going to definitely come up, and it was definitely something that was a point of contention on his last visit to Europe in May. And so issues like that. Of course, he's going to be seeing other leaders. The French president, he's going to be visiting France next week for Bastille Day. But, he's going to be continuing his dialogue with the new French president, as well as with the British Prime Minister, Theresa May. A lot of discussions about terrorism, security-related issues there, especially because the UK has been hit by a couple of attacks in recent months. And so that's definitely something that President Trump feels very strongly about, and will definitely want to continue those discussions moving forward.
Vivian Salama of the Associated Press. Thank you so much, Vivian.